Hello, I'm Literary Freak 11 and this is Enchantment and Evolution, where we talk about evolution and fantasy, how they mix, how they clash, and new ways to think about your favorite fantasy universes. I am apologizing right now for my background. I am actually on vacation, and so I still wanted to film a video, but I will not have my regular bookshelf background until next week. Anyway, so in honor of the Christmas special of Doctor Who coming out this week, I wanted to talk about the Silence. The Silence is a religious order that is an offshoot of the papal mainframe, and essentially what it is that they believe that silence will fall when the question is asked, and the question is Doctor Who. Now, we're more specifically going to be talking about the Silence with a T, the priests of the order, and how they have shaped human evolution and how they came to be. So they're basically genetically engineered beings, and they are a brand new species that is created according to the gametic species concept, which basically means that if your genes differ by about 3% from other species, you are a different species. Morphological species concept, which says that if two things look different, they're probably different species. And the biological species concept, which actually only semi-applies here because it says that when two groups of organisms can no longer reproduce with each other, they are different species. And this one gets a little bit complicated, because I believe that the Silence reproduce asexually, and here's why. First of all, we all know that in most sects of Christianity, the priests and the religious leaders are not actually allowed to have sex. So a way to get around that would be to have them reproduce asexually. The second reason is that if they're going to control all of human creation for many, many years, they would, in order to land on that planet and get more reinforcements from outside, they would have to, call up the people at the church, say, okay, we need 5 more Silence, and let's just say you take a day to genetically engineer them, another day to get them out there. That's a 2-day gap. But if you reproduce asexually, you can essentially just say, okay, we need 5 more. Who's gonna, butt off into the next, person, and they can expand as the human population expands. And then another reason I think they reproduce asexually is because they all look exactly the same, which kind of just proves my point even further, that they all have the same genetics. That's why I think they reproduce asexually. Now that kind of is a little bit hairy with the biological species concept, and the reason is because that only applies to sexually reproducing organisms. But I don't think that anything in the history of the world has gone from being sexually reproducing to asexually reproducing, so I don't think that this is a situation that can be mirrored in nature. So it's a little complicated. Now, how are the Silence involved in human evolution? We know that they've been guiding human evolution for eons, since the beginning, essentially, is what they said. Now, think about what the beginning is. There were tons of other humanoid species around at the time, So what I think the Silence did was they selected for Homo sapien. They saw the most promise in Homo sapiens, and they weeded out all of the other species of humanoids at the time in order to make us the dominant species so that we could basically take over the world and make the innovations they needed us to make. Now, the Silence and the humans have a predator-prey relationship, which gets kind of interesting, because they're more parasites. So a parasite is technically a predator. They're not going to kill the host because they need us. However, I think that this is an example of specific coevolution, as the prey evolves better defense mechanisms, the predators will also evolve defense mechanisms in order to eat the prey. So for instance, if you have a toxic lizard and that a snake is eating, the snakes will eventually evolve tolerance to the toxin, and the lizards will get more toxic, essentially. So the most recent adaptation in on the human evolution side, in the Doctor Who universe, is collective memory. Now, I don't think that they had collective memory before, and here's why. In the bathroom scene in Doctor Who, when Amy's in the White House, you can see that she has had an encounter with the Silence before, and she remembers them. But the other woman, even after just having seen the Silence, could not remember them again, whereas Amy did remember after only one other time of seeing them. So I think that that's a trait that evolved and given time would have spread profusely throughout the population. But I think that it also depends on the number of exposures and the length of each exposure as well. So I think that any human has the potential to develop that collective memory, but I don't think that it was there before. Perhaps some people can't do this, but like I said, I think it's a beneficial mutation that will spread over time. And the collective memory exists when the Silence say, you should kill us all on sight, right? So everyone remembers that, right? That's the way it seems, but I don't think it would. I think that some people don't have those genes, and I think that some people would see a silent and not remember to kill them because the collective memory isn't quite there yet. And I also think that the fact that humans have a weak memory is the Silence fault. We can see that over time, the more the Silence use a specific person, the more their brain gets addled, like that guy from the asylum, right? So I think that the reason that humans have weak memory, why we tend to forget things so quickly, and why our memories get damaged the more we access them, that is because of the Silence. That is because of what they're doing in order to manipulate us. And one of the reasons that I say that they're parasites, because one of the things that parasites do is that they will damage the host to some extent, but not enough to kill them. Even for the Silence, that's actually a trade-off, because the advantage is that they have this ability to manipulate people, but they also can go overboard and permanently ruin certain people by having overexposure. Now, I'm going to talk about the Silence interactions with technology. So, I think that the cameras, as an invention, wouldn't be a problem for them, especially in the early days when they weren't portable. You know exactly when a picture was going to be set up. They'd set up the camera, the photographer would have the little button and the cloth over it. It was a whole process. And so Silence could very easily avoid being in pictures. Even in videos, I think it used to be pretty obvious when someone had a camera and was filming. And I think that the natural progression of the Silence is to evolve with human technology. So as technology developed, the Silence would also develop ways to avoid exposure in the way that they had when they were on the video and basically told all of the human race to kill them all on sight. But here's the thing. Amy's phone was the only reason they won that battle. It was the only reason they beat the Silence, and here's why. Because she had technology from the future, from 50 years before it was even invented, before video phones were portable, before everyone would just flip their phones out for everything, and you could have everything you wanted on camera. So this was an age before everyone was filming things. they would, the silence, I think, would have evolved defenses against being on camera, or evolved more effective ways to erase themselves from the camera, or other things. Anything really, in order to protect themselves from being seen. But because Amy brought that technology back, they couldn't have evolved to stop themselves from being exposed. And because they didn't know what that technology was, that was the only reason that the Silents were unable to win the battle. And I also think that the Silents would have been able to evolve around the iDrives if they needed to. That's it for now. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.